Hello, welcome to the Armin Show, where we talk about everything science, human behavior, creativity, and more. Thanks for joining, and make sure to subscribe.
Hello, and welcome to the Armin Show podcast. This would be episode number 403. We have a topic we're covering, the social graph versus the interest graph, and we have a delightful guest back on the show here, Rebecca Faith Lawson, in the building. Rebecca, welcome.
Hello.
We're glad to have you on. All the people are glad. Hey, everybody. Now, we've got an important topic today. Before we get into that, Rebecca, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. In some cultures, they might say, ¿Cómo estás?
Bien. ¿Qué tal?
Yo soy bien. Claro que sí. ¿De dónde eres?
Soy de Florida. ¿Y tú?
Yo soy de California y de Irán.
Bien.
Bien. Bueno.
Bueno.
That is wonderful. We have covered 2 languages already, and that is a rapid usage of language. Very glad to have you on, Rebecca. A delight, and we support such an item.
Glad to be here.
Today's talk here, we're talking about the social landscape. 10 years ago, today, the social graph. At that time, the interest graph. Now, it's a big deal. It's happened over time and has impacted who knows how many millions of people along the way. Things have shifted from where they were 10, 12, 15 years ago. And it's worth looking into, what is that? What does that mean? How does that impact people day to day? So we'll get into that. I want to describe a little bit, give an introduction into the space, and then we can look into it. So the social graph is what we have known of, where, oh, this is my friends, this is my family, we're connected on the internet. The early internet companies took advantage of that, brought people together that they already knew, maybe their college roommates, friends, later coworkers, things like that, but more local to you, people you've actually met and shook hands with in some form. Now we have an interest-based graph, which is, if you like fishing, other people that like fishing is what you see a lot of. Or if you like to play chess, you see a lot of chess moves and graphs and things like that for that. So it's very, maybe people you never met in your life, but the interests match up with you and they are completely different. They feel different, they are different, and it's different for how companies respond to them. To describe the interest graph, it's the idea that people's interests are a major aspect of who they are as compared with their social connections from before. It makes part of their personal identity, and then it also connects with what they might want to buy, which is a big reason it has shifted in that direction recently. So I want to describe some of our opinions or feelings on the past versus now. When you think of the early days, Facebook early on, MySpace, maybe even before that, what did it feel like at the time? What do you remember of it? What sticks out? What was cool?
The first thing I participated in was MySpace and a little bit of AOL. And MySpace was so fun, I remember, because it provided an opportunity to customize a web page for yourself that kind of showcased who you were. You could include your profile picture. You could make your background and like your whole profile kind of reflect your personality, which was really fun. And you could update it as much as you want. You could change it every day, or you could just keep it the same. But everybody that you were friends with, they would basically go on your profile and they would see like an about me, they would see your interests, they would see anything about you that you wanted to share. And then also a big thing on there was having like a top friends. So you could always kind of like check out who that person considered their best friend to be, or their social circle. And it was interesting as well because you could also see all their comments. All the comments were public. So you could kind of sense even more of their personality based off of how they were interacting with people and the things they would say. And you could really get to know people. And it was just so fun and it was so interesting because like today where you have more image and video based content, then it was really showcasing a lot of personality. It wasn't just like one line, but these comments would be like little paragraphs and you would see them go back and forth between people. And I just like, I loved it then. And I even think about how like I would appreciate something like that now. Like I would still enjoy that. So how about you? Are you very familiar with MySpace? Did you participate in it?
These are important points. I did do a little bit of examining other people's pages, and I remember the early pages. They were sort of, I thought of the term like exterior design. It's like interior design, but outside of your home, but it's on an internet page. And it would have what you're describing. You would feel like you were going into somebody's space. Their representation of them was more connected, so everything was more impactful. Like if you commented on their item, it's like you're commenting on them at that time. So it was more a direct linkage. So that part was quite cool. And it was more affecting of people's feelings and emotions at that time because everything was so with them as compared with today. I did like that part. And the music, sometimes you'd see music that like that person represented that week for them. This is the song. This is the song.
Yeah. It was kind of like setting the mood for how that person was feeling in life at that time, whether it was that day or that week. Or if it was just something like it gave an opportunity to connect with a person. It's like, oh, if they had a song you liked, you could message them about it, or it was just another way to connect. And that was the coolest thing about it, is that it was just so social. It was like, okay, let me showcase myself virtually. Whereas I just feel like today it's not that deep.
It's like you were in their headspace at that time. That was a cool feature. Like, okay, I know what you're thinking at that time based on all these variables, versus now this post is just like a percentage of you. I have no idea what you're thinking at that time. It's just something. And you could have scheduled this post today 2 weeks ago, because some people now schedule stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
So you're not with the person right there as you used to be.
Right. The one element that I really like that kind of goes into more of like in the moment connection is the stories that are available today though. And I feel like that can be more personalized if it's not completely planned out. Because some people will post things that are like planned or edited on their stories. But for the most part, I feel like there are a lot of people who just in the moment will post something. And I try to be that way too. So it's like a very genuine in the moment connection that people maybe experience a little part of my day. So
that's a great quality. The curated items can create some sort of a distance. I don't know if they would want to create this, but it somewhat creates a distance the more curated something is. Because it's like layers back from just that person's thoughts at that time.
Yeah, totally. Curated can still be a great reflection of the person, but it's not exactly. It's creating a little bit of a distance. It's a good point. Mm-hmm.
Things we take note of. Now, that landscape we're more associated with Facebook, MySpace early on, and now we have what would be, I guess, the interest graph, the TikTok way, which other apps are also absorbing. I have a couple of quotes on here about this. What is the interest graph? In short, it's a way of organizing content based on users' interests rather than by who they know. So the who is not as relevant today as it was before. Even follower numbers are not as relevant today as they were before. With TikTok, anyone can discover your content regardless of whether or not they follow you. That means that your reach is no longer limited to your personal network of friends and followers. So they point out the positive end here. It's no longer limited. So that sounds cool. But it also no longer fully connects with your personal network of friends and followers. They don't put that in the quote. What are your thoughts on this interest-based landscape? Is anything missing right now?
I think, as we were talking about MySpace, I just have that appreciation for that social connection virtually. And I think that TikTok, you still can connect, but it's just, I feel like TikTok leans more on that entertainment side rather than on, hey, let me explore your personality and what you're up to and things that are currently happening in your life. And I think that the entertainment kind of, there's a lot of positives, sure, and you can express yourself in that way. But I think maybe it comes down to personality. It's like, what do you value? Do you value looking into that person's life, or do you value being entertained by content? And I think that there's always probably different preferences based off of the person, or even the time and the season of life they're in, or it could different variables. I think overall I'm more geared towards connecting with people and being social. So that's just my take on it. So TikTok doesn't grab my attention the way maybe an app in the near future even possibly could if it was driven by more socially related like content and whatnot. So yeah, how do you feel? Do you think that TikTok is something super valuable? Do you think people love it more than socialization, or do you have an opinion on it?
I think that they love it in some aspects of it being, in some ways it's more addictive because it is specifically, if you're in this certain mindset of wanting to watch World War II history material, boom, suddenly your day is packed with World War II history material that people just made 40 minutes ago. So it's real current sometimes, and then it's very specific to you. So that can be super addictive. You're like, the thoughts I'm having, it's happening right now about the topic I'm interested in, which was not the case with like your cousin Joe. Maybe the matching of interests with him was once in a while or occasionally, that there wasn't hitting that like specifically what you're thinking about on a regular basis. So the addictiveness is high. I like the features of the it connecting with what matters to you, but it does seem to be the people are taken out of it, such that a person could have no followers, they could have never met you, they could be in a far off nation, but the topic you're talking about connects with the topic you're thinking of, and boom. So the actual connection doesn't matter at all, but the message or concept is where all the value is. So it's like a complete trade-off in a way. Maybe you've never met the person.
Exactly. Yeah. That the interest versus socializing. It's a topic that I didn't even think, I couldn't have predicted that in 2013 when I was really just getting into Instagram, like even not even knowing it was going to be such a thing, just kind of playing around with the filters and stuff, like to think that Instagram would evolve the way it has. And even like looking back on MySpace, like the whole concept of either socialization or things that are interest based, it's like there's so many things that are behind the scenes that are happening with the businesses, and the businesses are looking at the profit, right? And so we as the users of the app, we're just being entertained, or we're connecting with people, but they're looking at, okay, well, what's making money? And we're just kind of we're like in this like wave of flowing with whatever direction the business, whatever direction the business is feeling is profitable, and therefore we're just kind of following along, and that becomes our reality though.
Right. We just then take it in like fish floating in the ocean, a group of fish in a way. Also, even the companies are doing this following along, because then once TikTok does it, then Meta, Netflix, Spotify, all the other tech firms who are based on content consumption as well, they have to follow the trend. They have a tension between should we switch or not. And once they see that this is working too well, the discovery aspect instead of familiarity, they tweak their algorithms to adjust in that way. So they're almost following along out of their hands as well. Is there a space for both familiarity and discovery now? Or was familiarity just something we dealt with because we didn't get to this better thing? Is today's thing better than before and that was useless?
I think the familiarity and the connection, that will always be innate in us. Like that's something that will never go out of style. When it comes to interest based, that's something that can be appealing, but that I believe that actually could go out of style. But when it comes to like what's the root of humanity, we need connection for survival and for well-being and all sorts of stuff. Do we need interest-based? I don't think so.
This is a great point on the bigger picture there. Right. Maybe it's
It's
not
just
so
kind of like a
key.
plus. So I think, in a way, if I think we'll see in the future more social connection type of apps because it's just who we are. And I even kind of think about things I've like recently heard, or things like that are, I think anybody can see in the world happening, is that when you take out the personal connection of anything, it kind of, it's almost like it's missing something. Like if you go to the bank, if you go to a bank, or at least I do, I think the little moments of connecting with people, whether it's like going to a teller and having an in-person experience rather than going to an ATM. And because those little connections, like, they matter in life. You don't think they might, but they actually do. And just for like our own mental health of like interacting with more people and connecting and all this stuff, like when you take out the human connection, you're taking out more than you know, or the more than you realize, because these things impact us in a positive way. And so when it comes to these apps, I think connection is what people want at the end of the day.
You know, when I think of news stories, you made me think of, if, let's say, there was some accident that happened and 3 people were affected, but it was in your local town, versus something happened, a train thing, and far away that was affected 1,000 people. Most people will still identify more or connect more or be affected more by the 3 people in their local town happening versus 100,000 people in some far off nation or such, because the level of connection, it makes sense. Oh, I know that road where that happened, or oh, I might know, I've been to that one store or something where I've passed that, versus I don't know that thing. It could have happened on Pluto at that point. So
Absolutely,
we
yeah.
we
It's
don't
like
connect with that.
it's like the same thing. It's like you always want your family to be okay, as opposed to, of course you care about other people, but like you're most connected, or for the majority probably of people, they really care about their family and they want them well and healthy and safe, and because you're just so linked. So it's I
Right.
think it's the same thing. It kind of just showcases our connection and what we care about.
It pings us more. It has more ping to our emotional state and our emotional well-being and how we go through the day, versus things that, like, for example, we were talking, like, let's say TikTok or interest-based things, they're less likely to really throw off your day. It might be cool to see material, but if it's not great for you or it doesn't connect, you're like, okay, because it's not, you can just immediately just click and it's gone.
Yeah.
Versus if it was the social landscape, that might affect me 4 hours later. I might run into that person. There's more. It's actually affecting me. This one's like easy to turn on and off.
And the whole topic of connection is a really interesting topic, because I feel like I am, to a certain degree, like aware of connection, or it's something that's really important, or it's something that has like all these elements to it, and benefits, and in multiple areas. But I feel like it's a concept that I would even love to like explore more and understand like the deeper roots of it, because it just like it impacts us, and it's like why does it impact us so much? And if everybody was aware of actually what's going on, then I think people would be, it would change how people function in life, just like the concept of what connection is between humans.
Right. Newsflash for all the listeners: the future episode we will be going into a connection and exploring that in more depth. Very true. Right. What does it mean? Like, how much does it? What's the root of that? What are you connecting to the most? It's worth looking at.
Yeah,
Because
because
that's
it's
that
kind
whole
of
landscape.
abstract, and it's happening, but you don't see it happening. Like, you don't, like, with your eyes, you don't see it, but it's like between, it's like mentally. So it's something that you can't see, but it's real.
It is real, and it's all I'm here for. Okay, it's all I'm here for.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's different forms of connection too, right? It's like it's not like there's just one form of connection, but there's all sorts of people connect over different things. People connect in different ways, different types of relationships. It goes into like boundaries, what a person is okay with connecting, what a person isn't okay in connecting over. Like I feel like there's just so many different elements to it, and I would love to explore more of how that goes into social media and like how people actually benefit from social media in a connecting way too.
Draw on that. Slight segue from that, but connected. The past had personal blogs. Blogging was popular, and I have a quote here about blogs, and it'll connect back to a connection. This quote says, "I miss personal blogs when they were smaller, less polished, and felt less like a performance and more like peeking into someone's inner life. It was less polished before and more relatable." What kinds of blogs or blogging spoke to you, and do you resonate with that concept of it being more relatable when it was just written down?
I think the blogs I've read, the ones that stick out are ones that are pretty authentic and pretty open. I can think specifically of one girl who was sharing about her life, and it was like before she was married, and then she got married, and then even she would write things about now her family life, and you could scroll the whole way down and flip, go through pages back, and you could glance into like where she was and her thought process or what she was up to. And I think I enjoyed that so much just because it was another way, another perspective of living life. And it was a girl who I knew she held some of the similar values that I do. And so it was like, okay, like this person is similar to me in these deeper ways. And now let me see how she's like living her life, because I think it really resonated with me, first of all, because it's something I personally have done a little bit of. I've done a little bit of blogging in the past, but also something I would really love to do is be more open with writing and writing about personal things. But I've always hesitated in that area because it's like being that personal publicly, you don't really know who's reading it, what it's attracting, if it's really productive. Maybe it's better just for yourself. Is it really affecting people? Are people going to appreciate it? Or are they going to maybe be jealous? Or you don't know what kind of energy is there. And the reason why I'm still open to perhaps doing that still is because it speaks to me so loudly. It's something that's like, Rebecca, like you got to do that. Like, Rebecca, you should do that. Like, it's that thing in my heart, in my head of like, express yourself, like show who you are. And because I have that feeling, and I don't want to just base everything off feelings, but like, there's something to that. It's something that resonates in my heart. And I'm like, you know what? Like, maybe that's something that's substantially real, and perhaps that's something I should listen to. So I haven't like shut off the idea completely. But to get back to that raw blog of that girl I was inspired by, it resonated with me because it's something that maybe I could do, but also I liked being able to be inspired by it. I just felt like her thought process, I liked the flow of it. It was thoughtful, and it hit a lot of like great points, and it just helped me reflect on my own life. And I think there's a lot of value in that. So,
right. It gives you a chance to review. You connected with the message, and that's a nice description there. Your inner feelings, we want to listen to them because not everybody has those same inner feelings. So they're clearly saying something that if we don't listen to them, that could be not great for our existence. It's some message there. Somebody else doesn't have that feeling. I guarantee I could find some people who are like, I have no inclination. Like, it just doesn't reach them. So they shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Sometimes that also like inspires me too, is hearing people don't have that inclination. Exactly. It's like, oh wait, well, maybe there's something to me having that inclination if somebody else is like, no way, I would never do that. So sometimes like that's why I also appreciate different perspectives hearing, because it helps you understand like your own that voice that's going on within yourself. Is like hearing that other people's are different than yours.
I do a lot of thoughts based on that counterpoint philosophy there. So it's like the not of that. Oh wait, if I did not do that, if you told me I could never whatever, that would be terrible. So that means clearly I would like to be doing some of that. Or like this one with other people, that person would never do it in their whole life, but I have a feeling of it. Okay, clearly there's a difference here. Clearly there's something to take note of.
Yeah. You can like see yourself, more clearly.
Very valuable one there. There's a follow-up from that about the blog. It said from somebody else, Helen Tran, this is how I feel too. Every time I find someone who has the less polished version, I get excited. And then Lauren Amani said, but do you think there's the same appetite for these? So in today's age, is there the same appetite for those just somebody wrote their thoughts blogs? Or has that been pushed out by it's got to be hyper-focused on the thing of right now or the goal? Or
I think that whatever anybody writes, I think it needs to have a level of a flow of communication. I think if you're going to like read something, it's got to have some sort of standard of like quality. But does it need to be completely polished? Well, I read a book that really is coming to my mind right now, and it was so unique because I've never read a book like this before, but this lady was writing about basically like her testimony of her life and some things she experienced, and she wrote it in her own voice, completely in her own voice. Like she didn't like correct the punctuation, she didn't correct certain things, but it was communicated really clearly. But it was like maybe she would have like multiple, you know how like sometimes people express themselves and like they'll like draw out the last letter in a word. Like they'll be like, okay, and then they'll put like 3 Ks or something. And it's like, so like examples like that, like she would like showcase her personality, or she would say things that, weren't exactly grammatically correct, but because she didn't correct it all over the place and make it look super polished, you could hear her talking. Does that make sense? Like, So I just think that if anyone writes a blog, you just want to make sure, and I'm even speaking to myself here, like the most important, valuable thing is that your voice is being heard through the screen. So like it's really coming from your heart, like your feelings, your experiences, and that you can still be polished and do that, but it's like, it's even better than being polished is that authenticity. Is like, okay, let me just write this, and even if I have these like weird whatever, maybe it's a little bit too much here and there, it's okay, as long as it's still a level of quality and communicating.
Right. The quality's got to be there, and you got to be actually showcasing your internal. It doesn't need to be so polished.
Right. And I want to ask you though, how, like, has any certain blog stuck out to you? Like, what kind of material do you think is valuable when it comes to writing blogs?
This is a substantial one. I had my blog 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, Timeless Information, with many articles. And then so I knew the blogging space through the other personal development writers. And when I think of blogs, I always think of them, Srinivas and Scott Young and Farnoosh Brock and Gail Brenner, psychologists and authors, and that category of people that wanted to put out their life messages. So for them, some of them, like Celestine Chua from Singapore, she basically put out her life on her blog, talking about how she was looking for a companion, later found a companion, later married the companion, talked about her like speaking at the Singapore conference on TV, national news. She basically, one by one, said, this is what I'm doing. So that was real. That's personal. Cool. That doesn't happen as much today, right? It's very like, I'm seeing the person through their steps, and she came one time. We hung out one time here in Los Angeles, which was cool. But you connect with the actual person, and some of the
I
other
love
ones
that.
too as well.
I think that's so ideal. Like you can follow along their every day almost. You can like peer into exactly what they've been up to. That's the coolest. Like I love that. Like I would love to do that, like sweet. You can like jump on their, yeah, you can like jump inside their mind almost.
That's the cool part, right? And then so when you see an update, it's an update from now that's real, not like an update that was planned from 6 months ago to sell a product. Like the angle is off. This one's just a person trying to do their best. That one makes sense. It resonates with me too.
Yeah, because it's like being on a journey, and then now you're on a journey, like you're on their journey with them. You're experiencing it almost like through them and with them, and you're like waiting for that next update, like what's happening, like what's next. And the thing is like I think if you're like, I think anyone's life can be interesting. I don't think you have to be doing anything crazy. I mean, it's exciting when you are doing exciting things, but simply the human experience, I think, can be interesting in itself. Like say it's like a stay-at-home mom or something, and she's just living her life. Well, and if she wants to write a blog about it, she can write about all the things going on in her life as a stay-at-home mom, and a million other stay-at-home moms are gonna be like tuning in because they can relate to it, and they like that would be interesting to them. So I think everybody has an audience out there kind of waiting for you, to be that connecting voice for them sometimes.
We represent for certain facets of an existence. Like that person is a stay-at-home mom. Maybe one time before they were a ballerina, and then they were at that was part of their existence.
And maybe that stay-at-home mom can transition. Oh, so maybe she's like a stay-at-home mom and she like now joins the workforce, but you're like staying up to date with her. And like maybe these other stay-at-home moms are like, ooh, I can still follow her because like, what if I ever did that? What if I ever want to go out into the workforce? And like, and now you're following her experience. Or it's like, I just think that's so neat. Like, how cool.
It's like a person showing you their decision trees, and you can see like, oh, that worked that way. Oh, if I did that, that would be that.
Right. But it definitely also like requires a lot of vulnerability. It's like, okay, life isn't perfect. So are you willing to share all the imperfections, or are you vulnerable enough to be honest and real in doing so? And I think that can be hard sometimes. But I mean, I think I would appreciate reading it. So that's something I think I'd be open to. But at the same time, you wouldn't want like any sort of backlash for being that way, for like opening up and sharing your life publicly. It's such a cool idea, but I don't know. It's a little bit risky.
That's true. A lot of the internet does say, I have this idea. It's kind of like a snowboarding concept. It's interesting. Maybe it takes care of itself. So you do a thing, you put out your message, and there are some great, and there's maybe a little neutral, and then there's some negative. Like, how could you believe in yourself? Because they don't believe in themselves. Or how could you do this? Because they couldn't. It's basically the person projecting, but it comes across negatively to you. But I have this philosophy that the individuals that are supportive are also the doers. They cause the most effect in life. They would be the people you'd have to worry about, but you don't, because they're positive and they do. And then the individuals that are more projecting, you don't really need to worry about, because they really need you to project onto. So they would never do much. And if they were doing much, they wouldn't be here. They would be here. So it kind of takes care of itself. Like, there's not that much actual energy from those who would project or bring negativity. It's a very low energy space. And in my analogy to that is in snowboarding. Let's say you fall down on the mountain and you're like, oh no, what if somebody runs into me? Well, if somebody's going fast, they're probably an expert, so they'll avoid you. If they're going medium speed, they have some skill, they'll somewhat avoid you, or they'll hit you softly. And the people that are not skilled will be going super slow because they were being careful. You really don't have to worry about anybody. That's my analogy.
That's
in the same way.
Unique. Yeah, that's a cool way of looking at it, right? Like seeing kind of what's actually going on, and if I'm going to be targeted, yeah, who's going to target me?
What kind
And
of
so
award-winning person?
Right. It might just be like an illusion. It's like, oh, it's almost just like, it's like, oh, these things could happen, but when you put into perspective like that, it's like, oh, actually, maybe everything's okay. Like, maybe I don't have anything to fear.
I think it's difficult for someone to be both of these things, putting a lot of effort and making their life great and have a lot of energy to do good or bad, and then somehow they decide to pause that and target random person in some way negatively. Putting those two together, I think, is super uncommon, because if they had this, they would do this, they'd be good, then they wouldn't be doing that. It's really hard to do both, I think.
Yeah, I think real quick, yeah, I think, yeah, the biggest part about it is like any sort of negativity a person would get, like, probably never parallels with the amount of people they could inspire. So I think that always, knowing the positivity can always trump any negativity, which I think is motivating. So
that is motivating. Now, we might be doing a part 2 on this one, because there's a variety of material to include here. The last one I will include on this one here is, what would you say is the general impact on people today from using either form? Are people more lonely today because of the discovery-based landscape? Does it lead to more of what is currently happening, which is the loneliness epidemic? Would there have been less 10 years ago? Might there be a connection?
It makes me think back to my analogy about banks, and some banks are getting rid of their tellers and using the ATM. So that less human interaction, I mean, would it cause more loneliness? I think so. Less human interaction of just connecting simply. It just disconnects people, and that's to do with, and yeah, it's because they've replaced it with technology. So sometimes technology can, you think it's, saving money, or you looking at the benefits, but is it really helping humanity? Not always. But when it comes to using it productively and connecting, like, I want to call somebody, I want to text somebody, I want to send them a photo, absolutely, I think people have to be really intentional. People have to make sure that they are interacting with people in person and not just virtually. And yeah, you just have to be mindful of the whole situation. But what about you? Do you have a take on it? Do you think people are more lonely, or do you think people are less lonely?
I think they are currently substantially more lonely. You don't hear from them because they kind of exit from the social landscape or find some sort of substance or item to run to. But I think the loneliness I've seen a lot of different graphs that represent the country and also the world, and the loneliness has gone up and up and up. And I think it has some connection. I'm not saying it's fully the social media companies, but some connection to how things have become more disconnected. Companies are more disconnected. Amazon has pulled products more disconnected away from your local bookstore. Everything is getting layers away from our human nature, which is not great for well-being, is my thought.
Exactly, for sure.
Now, definitely there must be a part 2, because there's a variety of material left, but we will leave that for a part 2.
Okay,
Rebecca,
sounds good.
I would like to thank you for having joined on this one.
Thank you for
Discussing the
having
social
me.
versus the interest graph. And until next time, Rebecca Faith Lawson in the building. The Armin Show is a culmination of so many of my discussions with thoughtful individuals, knowledgeable individuals, creative individuals, people who have something to say in a category that they have put effort into, maybe for years, maybe for decades. A lot of experience comes through. I like finding the links between people and topics of discussion in the categories that you have come to recognize. We're glad to continue the show, to branch out, to expand, to have more links between individuals, to have bigger groupings of individuals together in different formats so that the show becomes more of a show. And as we continue to do this, we're always glad for your support along the way. The Armin Show is something that has developed from all my past efforts, blogging, making videos, audios, and has reached to this point where there are now hundreds of episodes with people or just with myself, bringing knowledge, sometimes entertainment, information, something that can help us progress forward in the categories that I tend to cover. Hope you enjoy it, and onward we go.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please comment any takeaways you had, and we'll see you on the Armin Show next time.